Hi, welcome to ThinkTech. We are raising public awareness about technology, energy, diversity, and globalism. This show is Center Stage. I am your host, Donna Blanchard, proud managing director of Kumukuhua Theater, and we are coming to you live from Pioneer Plaza in downtown Honolulu, very near Kumukuhua Theater. I am very pleased to introduce you to my guest today. His name is J Arthur Rath. He is a writer and a storyteller and a historian of sorts. So without further ado, I give you J Arthur Rath.
I'm glad to know what I am.
Now that I have defined it for you,
Yeah,
do you feel a little bit better? You have an extremely interesting body of work that I barely know where to begin with, and it's not often that I am completely
Overwhelmed?
at my wit's end. Yeah. What I would like to start off with, if you don't mind, is your book, Being Menehune, which we have right here. That camera, Being Menehune. What brought you to write a book called Being Menehune, My Journal?
What did it?
Yeah.
Because I started keeping a journal of my imaginary world at age 9. I still have it, still work on it.
And in your imaginary journal, you were conversing with a Menehune?
Not conversing, but traveling into the past with them. It was very simple why I did it. I had to escape the horrible life that I had. It was my out. I lived in one foster home after another. We came back to Hawaii and were living in the country. And I had been reading literature that was far too advanced for me. So it put kind of crazy ideas in my head, like H.G. Wells' The War of the World. And Hawaiian culture was suppressed at that time. And the family has a museum called Lyman Museum in Hilo. And being an inquisitive little elf, they allowed me to go through all kinds of stuff. And from there, I began imagining that I went back into the past, and Menehune made it possible. Kids have imaginary friends up to a certain age. Mine just never left me.
So,
unlike Harvey.
Unlike Harvey. Can you go back a little bit further in your, when you said when you came back to Hawaii, and what was going on in your life that you had a very tumultuous years?
My mother was a single parent. Women lost their jobs like that during the Depression. Then men who were not from the islands were the next to go. And my mother had to go to the state of Washington, where she'd gone to college and work as a social worker. And from there, I went to foster homes because her job involved traveling. So I lived in foster homes. And in the foster homes, I started creating my own imaginary world because I was such a sickly, almost dying kid.
Okay, and very often great hardship breeds great imaginative work. So I'm very sorry that happened. I'm happy to have you here to talk about your work now, though. Okay.
Well, it turned out to be fantasy worlds happened to be good for me. I mean, what the heck? If Mark Twain could have his hero go back into King Arthur's court, why couldn't I go back into Hawaiian courts? Why not?
Yeah, why not? So you kept these journals that you wrote from a first person,
age 9,
present tense?
Imagining what I was seeing.
Okay. So you...
Well, actually, people took me there.
The Menehune took you there. And this is, by the way, this book is available on Kindle. I downloaded it. I have it. Yeah. I started reading it. I'm anxious to...
It's not an easy read book because if I'm successful with my present genre, this book may become seminal because I explain how I became the way I am. That's really what it's about. Yeah. And it goes into a lot of literature and things that you can't imagine a young kid would know, but I did because of kind relatives who encouraged my reading.
So you were reading very advanced work at a young age, and you were
I started at age 3 with something, I don't know how advanced it was called the Honolulu Star Bulletin. Yeah, I was a kid in bed and I read fairy tales.
Yeah.
Read Robert Louis Stevenson. He lived the same kind of life, so I thought, as did I.
You know, this question is a little bit off the topic, but now I know that most newspapers are written at about an 8th grade reading level. Were they then, or were they written in a more advanced language then?
Well, I was 4 years old and the language didn't seem too advanced for me.
And we were also reading Robert Louis Stevenson, though.
Well, yeah, and Ambrose Bierce,
I don't even know who that is.
The Devil's Dictionary.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you were reading at a pretty advanced level.
Yeah. My uncle, who was 13 years old at the time, he used to get a big kick out of having me read from the paper what's going on to his friends from Punahou. And he got me preparing little flashcards where I would put the word on one side and its meaning on the other side. And that's how I built my vocabulary.
That's how you built it. Yeah. Well, not only, okay, so you built up a nice vocabulary, but you were also digesting the information well, because I think what's pretty amazing about this book is you're taking a lot of the folklore and you are feeding it to us in this book in a very easy to understand, not only understand, but absorb way.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
Yeah, but what I'm doing next is going to be more easily absorbed and will not be autobiographical.
What are you doing next?
I'm back in Hawaii in 1600 when common women were ignored, and my heroine is a common woman, where there was a social caste that were marked with a dot on their forehead, that were the untouchables of Hawaii. No one ever talks about them. And I bring to the fore Mu and Wa, the first residents of Hawaii before Menehune. Mu couldn't speak. Wa never shut up. And they, in my fictional way, adopt this little child who is left in the woods by her parents, kind of like little, like Hansel and Gretel, to die, probably. They saved her and she became my heroine.
Okay.
Her name is Ola, which means healer.
And, okay, Mu and Wa, is this Hawaiian folklore? That it
doesn't really make it in Hawaiian folklore, but early anthropologists, some of whom I met, knew of them. And yes, they were the first in Hawaii. And now that people are getting wiser and discovering things, they say, oh, look, there were little people in Java, which is where the Hawaiians came from. So all of this seems esoteric, but not to me.
Okay, I appreciate that. Now, and I have read some Hawaiian folklore. When I was moving here, I tried to absorb as much reading as I could. And a lot of it is written, it feels like it's written for someone who has already heard it throughout their lives.
And it's usually compiled by, pardon the expression, white people who came from other places.
Yeah, and it was not, I'm a reader, and it didn't hold my interest.
No.
And I expected it to be like, you know, the new Greek mythology for me to absorb.
It's not.
No, it's not.
Because there was conflict going on. The missionaries didn't want fairy tales to be told, you know, with their new Calvinistic religion. And this stuff was Hawaiian folklore, fairy tales.
So Mu and Wa and your heroine, your story is about your heroine. How far?
And the Kawa, the untouchable caste, no one ever speaks to them. But you know, after a battle, the losers might be grabbed by the winners, tattooed with a dot on their forehead, and they become slaves, the first to do all the manual work. They're untouchables, and the first to on a hail. This is all true.
And there were a lot of sacrifices then.
Oh,
Yeah.
can't have a party without it, you know, and that's the way you started Makahiki.
Yeah, you can't raise a new building without
No,
4 of them.
no,
Probably.
things aren't going well. It's very like old Greece.
Yeah. Well, there's some base human nature in both
Base
sides.
human nature is a good word.
Yeah, thanks. That means a lot to me coming from you. So how far are you on this book?
Well, I mean, when will it be done? Be done this year.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
written, you're in editing now?
All writing is rewriting.
Oh, yeah, okay. I gotcha. Okay, so
I can show you some pictures.
that story, let's see, we've got about 2 minutes left in this segment, so if we can, look through some,
Okay.
are these illustrations
Okay,
that are
I'm
going
doing
in
it,
now?
I'm not doing it in the classic Hawaiian history style where everyone is muscle bound and everyone wears helmets, although very few people did. This is Kahekili, who is actually an ancestor. He's the king, he's tattooed half from the side, and he loved to dive. Here is the little healer with the Mu and Wa. She's dropped in the woods. And here is the Untouchable with her, who teaches her to be a medicine woman. Those herbs, some people will recognize them, some of them are known now today. This is her house, open space so no one can sneak up on her. And she teaches the nurses, the male nurses, Aikani. They were Mahu, if anyone knows what that is. She teaches them to be healers on the battlefield.
The Mahu, that's
Mahu.
not untouchable.
No,
What's-
Mahu's a gaze.
Oh,
Some people think that's untouchable. I don't.
Okay. She teaches the Mahus.
With her drugs, to care for the wounded warriors. You know, this is Stone Age warrior, hit on the club, or speared, or eviscerated. And the Mahus, or the Aikani, I prefer to call them that, Aikani go into battle with their favorite warriors, just as the Spartans did, Greek Spartans. And she teaches them to apply the right potions and to help them die.
And her character, have you read about her or did you invent her? You invented her.
Well, yeah.
Is she a conglomeration of other stories that you've heard, or is it all?
No, this is me.
This is
This
you.
is me. I understand the culture, and I don't have to read what somebody else wrote to be creative.
Gotcha. And I'm interested to know you said they are the precursors to the Menehune. Then how did the Menehune get here?
By boat,
From,
Java.
oh, the Menehune came from Java.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that.
Well,
I'm
few
from
people
Indiana.
do. Few people do. And they went back to the Marquesas, and most of them went to New Zealand, where there's still some scene. But yes, they came here. I wrote a Menehune opera, which is in that little book. And Pele was their captain with her sisters. All this is based on lore. But when the little Java girl was discovered just a couple of years ago, and big news, National Geographic did a big feature on it, then people began to realize there were little people back there. There were. What can I say? I'm a seer.
You are, I guess.
Seer and seer.
Nice. I honestly thought that the Menehune were all just myth.
Well, Hawaiian culture has become a myth too.
Well, hopefully not. Yeah, some of it
Well,
is.
that's what I write Facebook blogs about. Yeah, I'm old, part Hawaiian, know the stuff. I have, I won't call them biases, I call them things I protect. And the culture and folklore is
Something you're protecting. And I want, quick before we go to break, I want to say you are a descendant of the Lyman missionary family,
Yeah, going back to 4th century England.
as well as the Hawaiian ali'i.
Yeah, well, some, not that Kamehameha guy, but Kuali'i is primarily the best known. And then Kahikili is a relative too. So yeah, it's real stuff.
So you have this on good authority. Okay, we are going to take our first break. So you can relax.
Can I take a breath now?
You may take a breath now. Relax
Okay.
for just a moment. I'm so happy to see where we're going to go in the next segment. Please
Okay.
be sure to come back. We will be right back on Center Stage on
They're
ThinkTech Hawaii
getting a
digital
hook to pull
series.
me off.
Aloha, my name is Miley Scarpino, and I'm the host of the Empower Hour. If you're interested in health, nutrition, fitness, here on the island of Oahu, want to learn more about places to train at or different trainers available, then watch my show on Fridays at 3. We have a great time, and I hope that you'll come join us. Much aloha. Now go get swole.
Aloha, how you doing? I'm Gordo the Texar, here on ThinkTech Hawaii, where we co-host Hibachi Talk, where we talk about technology and bring in all kinds of cool guests. Also, my co-host with me today is
Andrew the security guy. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching ThinkTech Hawaii, and thanks for watching Hibachi Talk. We also have Angus.
And you there, lad? It's Angus. I bring in all kinds of wee things. Oh, look, you see my lips moving.
Hi, we're back. This is Center Stage on the ThinkTech Hawaii digital series. And I want to let you know, if you would ever like to be a guest in our downtown studio, you may just email jay@thinktechhawaii.com. He'll be happy to talk with you. If Arthur is here as my guest as a suggestion from Damon Ramsey, who helped me out with that. And even if you're not my boyfriend and you have a recommendation for me, just send me a message on Twitter at allaboutdonna. I would love to hear who you'd like to suggest come on. So without further ado,
I didn't
let's
volunteer, I was coerced into this.
You were coerced. I understand that. And I'll have you know that on Damon's recommendation alone, I said, that's all I need to know. You think he'd be a great guest? Okay, we're going to have him on. And thus far, he has scored some major points.
I like Mr. Runyon very much.
Mr. Ramsey? Mr. Runyon? I don't know who that is. Okay, so let's go back into your history for just a moment. You spent a lot of time in the foster homes. You came back to Hawaii. Were you then with your mom, or were you raised by aunties?
Yeah,
here?
I was, I lived with my mother for maybe a total of maybe 2 years. And then she was always traveling. She was covering the whole island of Hawaii. So I was under the care of Hawaiian women, more Hawaiian than I'm. And I began including them in my journal as imaginary figures, since people I met became part of my real and imaginary world. So back, and I lived with her. The World War II was going on, and that's when my adventures with cowboys, real adventures and things like that began.
Where did the idea for writing in a journal come from? Did you know someone who did that?
It came from Mark Twain.
Oh.
Your author wrote every day, said the Kona librarian as I returned to Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. I read that in the Mark Twain Journal, a periodical. We've most of his book. What's a journal? Similar to a diary, describing events, relating stories, explaining things. A journal, what a neat way to retain information. Right then, being 10 in 1942, I decided to write a journal beginning with a 1731 battle I'd just seen. Then I explained being with Menehune.
Do you still keep a journal?
Pardon me?
Do you still keep a journal?
Where do you think this writing comes from?
Okay.
You think I make this up?
So do you
I
have...
still have the journal, yes.
Good.
I started to bring parts of it, but yeah, I learned to type you know, we didn't have copying machines, so if you wanted to take information from books, and I used to go through the books in the Lyman Museum family home, which is now part of the Smithsonian, as you know.
Oh,
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
It's real. It's legitimate. It's here in Hawaii. But I used to go through things there, literature, books, and writings, and I would copy them down. I'm sure I have them.
And you still, but are you still actively writing in a journal now?
Well, that's, yeah.
That is
I
what
mean,
you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I do.
That's what you do. So do you have boxes and I don't know why I'm so curious about this. Do you have boxes and boxes of journals because you've been doing
No,
this?
I have boxes and boxes of sheets of paper. Now I have a thing called Apple.
Oh.
She's my mistress.
Gotcha. Got to give her a little loving every day, right?
Yeah, I have my hands on her all day. Till early in the morning. I'm an inveterate typer. I learned to type, you know, before I went to school, went to junior high.
Oh. So you...
From a war correspondent, and that's another book.
That would be Lost Generations?
No, Soldiers Remember. It's a book I
That's not
published
even
a
on
few
your
years
website.
ago.
Oh, I didn't even see that one. Before we go too much further, I want to say that most of your books are available on Amazon, and they can be downloaded on Kindle,
And they can be found at your local public
and they
library.
can be found at the library.
Hawaii Library, I don't know about where else it is.
Hopefully they're in some of the other libraries also. You know, the reason I'm here working with Kumakukua Theater is I think it's very important to share our stories, not just
But
stories
these
that are here
aren't
in
my
this place.
stories. These are any Hawaiian stories.
Right. To share stories, though,
Yeah.
to make sure that we are sharing stories in a way that is easily absorbed and experienced. And
I'm sharing
theater is
Hawaiian
one
culture
way.
about which people know nothing.
Yeah, very little.
And Menehune folklore wiped out. So what happened is when the missionaries came, they basically outlawed fairy tales that Hawaiians had told for what they had. So Hawaiians created their own Noah with his ark.
Yeah, and the missionaries didn't care for that.
Well, you know, I'm from a missionary family, so what can I say?
Yeah. How do you feel about James Michener's Hawaii?
Great opportunist. His golden people, I don't know, I've studied everything that he's written. I didn't read, I've studied it. He's a marvelous writer. Can I say?
Oh, I enjoy his
He had a
writing.
bias, and just as I have a bias,
Yeah.
I think he had an Asian bias. I have a Hawaiian bias.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, and I think he probably, more of the Asian story resonated with him for whatever reasons. And
He had
have
an
very
Asian
clear
wife. What
reasons.
did you think it would resonate?
I didn't know that.
Talk to me.
Well, boom. All right. We need to talk a lot more often, clearly.
Or
Okay.
talk with me, don't talk to me.
I won't, I'll talk with you. I promise. Okay, so
Can I show you this?
started, sure, these are more illustrations from the book you're currently working on?
No. These are illustrations answering the questions that you're asking me,
Okay,
okay?
then you jump right
See?
in with them.
This is me several years ago,
Let's go over here.
several years ago, with what I've read in my head.
Ah.
And here are little Menehune who still put things in my ear.
Okay.
This is not impromptu, I've been doing this.
This has all been in your head. And for those watching, I'm sorry, there's a lot of green in here and it's doing strange
A lot of
things with
what?
our greens. The green in it is doing strange things with our green screens.
Oh, that's good. Well, I have more green. It's
We've
my
got more
favorite
green.
color. This, and what I do is I integrate fairy lore. You know, these are Irish fairies dancing a ring. I integrate them with Hawaiian lore because when people come here, they bring their own fairy tales within their head.
Yeah.
Fairy tales don't go away, so I let them keep them here. And current events such as when the night blooming cereus, why do they all open at the same time all over Hawaii? I explain how Menehune make this possible.
Oh, the Menehune.
Through the Menehune network. Yeah, that's what this little guy is. The reason he's small is because he's Menehune.
He's making it happen. You explain this in,
I put up almost weekly blogs.
oh, on your blog. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. There's
At
nothing,
Menehune,
nothing to do with my book.
Menehune Rath. Menehune, R-A-T-H is your website. And you do have a lot of, you have a lot of very engaging writing that you've put in there
Well-
that is sort of all over the place.
Well, not really.
No.
3 directions. Blog, in which I try to introduce funny little stories that current people might be able to relate to, in which I bring in Menehune, or I explain, like this one, why Hawaii has dragonflies, because a dragon came to Hawaii and Pele turned it into a dragonfly. Didn't like its breath.
I thought Pele had red hair.
Pardon?
I thought Pele had red hair.
Her hair depends on her mood.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't yours?
Actually, it does. Those who have known me for a while will tell you that too. Okay.
So that's the blog. I try to put up something every week. I had a little impasse. Now I have a new scanner. I have things like this stacked up. I'm doing it all the time. What I'm trying to do is give a light-hearted look to folklore. It's fantasy within my head, but it's based on something you may have heard or read. I sometimes make moral things about why we shouldn't be polluting the ocean the way we do. So it's current events placed in a fairy-like, the Hawaiian word is kalohi. Kalohi.
Kalohi. And what is this?
K-O-L-O-H-E, or K-A-L-O-H-E, spelled both ways. It's mischievous storytelling way.
Ah.
That's what I do. And I do it to try to lure some people into liking my style or my perspective. And I keep on with my Menehune books.
And you do have a voice that is, say, very easy on the eyes to read.
I'm a readability specialist.
Yeah, you're very readable, and your voice is, like I read some of Death Valley Days, and I'm a big fan of Larry McMurtry, and it immediately made me think of the way in which he brings me into that Old West world.
Well, I'm trying to be tutorial. I have the website, and every week I try to put up a new blog. Every month I try to bring in fairy lore, not Hawaiian fairy lore, but fairy lore, because I approach it from many, many perspectives. Presently, I'm working on the psychological one. Some of it's quite arresting, but I want to be known as someone who understands fairy lore. And the third part of it is on Menehunes, and I tell the story of Menehune in Hawaii. And it was that section that got the History Channel to come here to Hawaii to do the Lost Tribe of Menehune.
Yeah, how long ago was that they did that documentary?
Last year, maybe 8 months ago.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to find that. I didn't even know about that. If I had seen that, I would have called you up then. I wouldn't have even needed
the Lost
Damon.
Tribe of Menehune.
Okay.
The Lost Tribe of Menehune.
Okay.
And I think
And
it's
then
up
I'll
there.
find
You can find it. It broadcasts nationally, and it's still.
What do you mean when you say the psychological aspect of fairies?
Of fairy lore. Well, this is a piece I've just written and I haven't posted yet, but I talk about going back to the early history of folk tales, back to the days of Homer, and then the happy Germans and the Danish, and I talk about I won't mention her name, 2 very famous women poetess. Anne Sexton was one. Sylvia Plath was the other. They would talk about things like this. And Sappho's the original woman poetess of the island of Lesbo, and Sapphism is, allegedly named after her. She wrote about folklore too. And within it is a lot of, shall I say, sexual undercurrent. And not the way Walt Disney does it, but the way it was originally handled. Anne Sexton, she has done quite a bit on this. And I write about things like that. Then I'll go on to another topic, trying to show the many aspects of fairy lore and how it is there to amuse, entertain, inform, and maybe explain.
And, yeah, okay, and why we have it. We're going to go to another break, and we'll come back and we'll pick that up. All right? We'll be right back. Please stay tuned. We'll be back with J Arthur Rath.
There we go.
Aloha, my name is Jim Shawn, and I'm host of a show called Education Movers, Shakers, and Reformers. Each week, live streaming at noon on ThinkTech Hawaii, we interview people who have special insights into education, from early education through K-12, all the way through higher education and beyond. Both public and private are areas we're interested in. We dig deeper. We try to find out what it's really like to be involved in making change, advocating for it, how you reform, what people's philosophies are in reforming it. As I said, we're live streaming every Wednesday at noon on ThinkTech Hawaii. And later on, you can find these interviews on YouTube and on the Hawaii Educational Policy Center website. We hope you join us as many times as possible. Aloha.
Hi, we're back and we are live. This show is Center Stage on the ThinkTech Hawaii Digital Series. We thank you for being here, and I forgot to mention, as I do too often, if you would like to tweet to us during the show, you may do so. It's ThinkTech HI, and if you have any questions for us, we will try to get to those questions in this last segment here. Okay, so you talked a little bit about the psychological aspects of fairies, and you're getting to why we keep fairies, why we keep this folklore in our lives. What I would like to know is why you feel it is important to get this out there, to write it. You are putting in a lot of work, a lot of hours. Why?
Well, I think the word important is maybe too dramatic. Maybe if you ask me why I feel the need.
Why do you feel the need to do this?
Correct. I feel the need because a lot of secrets have been contained within my life to protect me. In Lost Generations, I opened Pandora's box and let it all out. I lived up at Kamehameha schools from age 12 up until 17. And it wasn't until I went back for my 60th reunion that a very dear friend said, "I'm glad things turned out well for you." And I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, we all know your secret." And I said, "What secret?" And then I found out the horrible story, or the story of my horror, that I describe in Lost Generations.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, yeah, in simple terms, I'm J Arthur Rath III. J Arthur Rath I, who came from India, started Palama settlement and was regarded as a saint in Hawaii, in the vernacular. James Arthur Rath Jr., my father, was arrested twice for murder and raped my mother, and was, it's explained in Chapter 3, was pushed out of the islands, and that's why my mother was, my mother's brothers carried their shotgun and made sure that I had a father. And that's the secret that was hid from me, and I didn't know it until recently.
Very well. What did you know anything about your father? Had you been told anything before
Not
that?
until recently. I did meet him finally, but no, that was why I was sick. Never had a stable environment. Went from home to home in Washington, Los Angeles, in Hawaii, and I found my world in literature, in books. You know, Robert Louis Stevenson, Lewis Carroll, folk like that, and I was reading H.G. Wells when I was probably 10. And you know what was happening there was happening here, and it just turned my mind towards the imaginary world, and I began collecting Hawaiian history, folklore. Most of it was folklore because the history was told by whites, and it became what I did, and as I moved on and left Hawaii, I became engrossed in folklore of other types up in the Adirondacks, came to know members of Indian tribes very well, and just began accumulating and seeing how it all fit together. And yes, there is a psychological undercurrent. Yes, I believe. And if I'm successful with what I'm doing, and I think the book I'm working on now will be more palatable, easier to read, less esoteric, et cetera, then what is in being Menehune will be discovered as being seminal, how a little boy saved his mind.
Did you recognize when you were a little boy that you were blurring the lines of reality?
Well, listen, I had operations for asthma, I had an operation for cancer, my appendix burst within me, every line was blurred, I was living in foster homes. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
What do I recognize? It's my imaginary world of music and literature sustained me, and my writing.
And your writing.
My world that I created.
Yeah. And you probably, at that age, didn't even realize how it was oxygen for you to write. You just did it because it was part of...
It was a better world than the one I was living in.
Yeah.
That's
So-
what fantasy is all about.
That's what fantasy is all about. Okay, so let me ask you this. Where do you think that this world of folklore, how does that mesh with the world of religion, organized
The
religion?
world of what?
Religion.
Well, I come from a missionary family, and I know the Bible quite well. A lot of folklore there.
That's what I thought you might say, actually. Okay.
I mean,
you
did
can-
Jonah really get eaten by a whale? According to me, he did, and in one of my blogs, I tell how Moby Dick came to be on the porch of my ancestral home. True.
True?
Yeah, Herman Melville was a clerk in Hawaii, and he saw this guy who had lost his leg to a whale, rocking on the chair of the family home, spitting tobacco juice over the rail, and he made him Captain Ahab.
Yeah. So you actually did, Herman Melville, no, you didn't know him. You couldn't.
Well, he was a little before me.
He was a little before
Not
you.
much.
I'm trying to figure it out in my, okay. But you knew Alex Haley.
Who?
Alex Haley?
Oh, Haley, yeah,
Yeah.
he's the guy who got me going.
How did that happen? Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, Alex Haley was a black man who grew up in upstate New York. He used to go to a bar regularly in the Hotel Savoy in Rome, New York, and I would go there regularly. It was a piano bar, a good pianist. We had an affinity between Hamilton College. I'd gone there, and Alex had taught there. He was the one who said, I came out with my roots, why don't you come out with yours? And I said, well, maybe, and he said, you'll know when it's the time. This is the time.
This is
So
the-
I'm not shy about anything. I'll do it.
You're not.
Hila hila is a Hawaiian word.
Which means, to
Shy.
hide. Oh, okay.
Shame.
Doesn't do anyone any good.
Eh.
We just have about 4 minutes left here before we need to wrap up. Here, we have to do this. Your ideas led to enhanced opportunities for older Americans, and you fostered today's charge card, banking, and cash machines.
MasterCard's mine. It happened in Hawaii.
MasterCard's yours.
Yeah, I mean, the concept and all that. The Rath Senior's research, I was became a big expert on readability. I had, okay? Am I making you choke up? Okay, I became an expert on the elderly market. I mean, that's in the World of Rath, which is in, all of that is in there in the Menehune Rath website, the World of Rath. All that's explained. I don't need to go over it. I'm making you emotional.
I beg your pardon. Well, excuse me, I'm dealing with some allergies right now. I'm going to have to read to find out how you were involved in the charge card.
Hi, Jay.
Hi, Keith.
My name's Keith Bettinger.
I knew that.
And I'm the host of ThinkTech Asia.
I knew that too.
Here on ThinkTech.
Fabulous. You got a great show going, Keith.
Thank you very much. And for our viewers out there that are interested in ThinkTech Asia, it airs every Tuesday from 4 to 4:45, and it can be accessed online at thinktech.com.
Yeah, so what kind of guests you like?
Well, we have a number of guests from academia, from practitioners of international affairs. Sometimes we have military officials. Sometimes we have public officials on the show. And our goal, we try to talk about current issues in South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, and Central Asia, all throughout the Asian realm in more depth than you would find in traditional mainstream
That's the
media.
difference, isn't it?
Exactly.
That you're reaching out beyond what ordinary news media would do.
Right.
That's why we like you so much.
We're trying to provide a thinking person's perspective, an intelligent perspective on what's going on, and we're both sides of the story, or even when there's more than two sides, we try to cover every angle. And I think that's one of the big benefits that we provide here at ThinkTech, is it's a really innovative source of educational programming for the people of Hawaii.
You're great, Keith. You are a great host. You got a great show going on. I watch it every week.
Thanks very much.
Why don't
Jay.
you guys watch it every week too, okay?
4:45 to 4 to 4:45 every Tuesday.
I am so sorry about my little coughing fit there. I'm dealing with allergies right now. I really appreciate how understanding you were. I'm sorry to wrap up the show like
Are you allergic
that.
to me?
I don't believe so, although I've had some problems around handsome, debonair men before. So
Fairy dust.
in fairy dust. Oh, thank you for sticking with us, and thank you so very much for coming here. I have already downloaded Being Menehune, and I definitely will keep an eye on your blog. You have a lot of interesting stuff coming out on a daily basis, and I really appreciate that you're doing that. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay, we're going to wrap up. That was in more than 2 years of shows, the first time I've done that, so at least I can say now I've got it out of the way for the next 2 years. I hope that you will join us next week. I would like to thank Zuri Bender, our studio overlord, who just was absolutely wonderful about going to commercial when I needed it, and she's in my ear with us. I would like to thank Jay Fidel, who somehow manages to put all of this together, and you for being here. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.